Welcome to the last video of this engine rebuild series. At least it is for the building part and the break-in part, which I'm doing in this video, because after this there's only going to be one video breaking down the costs and how much I paid for this whole rebuild, which isn't going to be much. You are following me on my first drive with the car after the rebuild, so yeah, this is basically the same for me. I let the car warm up to operating temperature and only up to there, so that the thermostat I know opens, and then I took it out to drive. You don't want to let the car idle unnecessarily long, because idling the engine and letting it kind of break in that way is not a good way to get the engine to a point where it is actually properly broken in. So this is why you want to drive basically right away and don't want to let it idle like 20 minutes or something, or whatever, how long, and that is kind of the thing to do. Although there are a lot of people who have different opinions, I have had a lot of success with this method, so I keep doing this and keep doing it like this. In this video I will drive about 40 kilometers, so about 20 kilometers to one spot where I check the car over, and then I drive back, and after that already I will do an oil change. This is going to be the first oil change, and yes, you have to do it within like 50 kilometers or so that the most of the shavings that you actually will get from the cylinder walls and piston rings, you will drain out of the oil. These shavings will be created because the piston rings, or rather the cross hatching that you have produced, has kind of sharp edges on it, and the piston rings scrape up and down those edges, and they kind of wear in that way. And this is why you don't also want to drive like a grandma or whatever. You want to keep the RPMs a bit higher, you want to give the engine some load, and this is what creates a bit of cylinder pressure to push the piston rings outside better or more evenly break in those bores. Of course you want to warm up the car first, so I'm driving relatively slowly here, but when I am on the highway, for example, I am always changing gears. I'm always trying to vary an RPM, trying to give it some load. On an NA car this is pretty easy. You should give it some longer load periods and also do some RPM sweeps. You just do not want to like rev it out to 8,000 RPM just until like 5,000 RPM or so is fine, and maybe hold that for a few minutes. If you drive, for example, uphill, that's also a good thing, but after a few minutes give the engine some time to cool down. Because of the added friction, it will also heat up the oil much quicker, so that you don't overheat the piston rings or generally everything. So just do this in periods. You wanna give the cylinder some pressure and then drive slowly again, and do that the whole way of those 40 to 50 kilometers or whatever. I also have my dead cans with me, so I can check if the engine is knocking or has detonation. Although I have not changed anything with the ignition map, I have changed the compression ratio because I installed 4A-GE 20 valve blacktop pistons, which are about 1 point in compression higher than the silver top pistons. So I'll have to look out for that, and look out if the engine is knocking or if there are any signs of detonation. Otherwise, I also am running Tuner Studio while driving, because I had relatively low compression when it's the engine before I rebuilt the engine, and the compression numbers should be up now, or should be going up with the break-in of the engine. Auto-tune should be adding some fuel, and you can also see, I will just show you a picture here, that auto-tune actually added some fuel. While yes, it is not that terrible if you run a bit rich or a bit lean in the break-in period, you absolutely do not want to run way too rich or way too lean in this braking period. This is essential for the braking of the engine. If you run way too rich, your cylinder walls are going to be washed down and you will not have an even surface, and you might even get scratches within the cylinder walls, which you do not want. So make sure that on an NA application you run between, let's say, 15 and 13 AFR, and on a turbo application it's gonna be similar, but with boost it's going to be richer. But when braking in a turbo engine, you do not want to hit boost, maybe only a few PSI. Yes, on very small turbochargers that's not going to be avoidable, but be careful, and if you can avoid hitting boost or avoid going onto boost much, it might even be the best option to disconnect the wastegate flap so that the engine does not, or the turbo does not produce any boost. Because boost obviously will create a lot of extra cylinder pressure. While you want a bit of cylinder pressure, excess cylinder pressure can lead to piston rings even sticking, and that can result in catastrophic engine damage in the worst case scenario. I'm gonna just show you some driving now and how I actually am varying RPM. I unfortunately did not focus right, so it's going to be a bit blurry, but you will get what I am going on about. And I also unfortunately forgot to record my tuner studio, which you can see on the bottom right corner. Yeah. And something funny actually happened to me, because well, in the video you can see it, I don't know why, but the pulley from my accessory belt decided to just hang loose for a bit, and decided to, when I revved the car, roll in front of the car. I didn't really know what that noise was. And then I looked in front of my car and there was a pulley rolling down the street. Yeah, that was my accessory belt pulley. It looks like the nut came loose, and yeah, I had to fix that at the gas station I was going to, and that was kind of a weird experience. I first thought there was like a hole in the block or whatever, because it sounded like so weird, so metallic and stuff, but luckily it wasn't anything too bad. So, okay, after that drive I just came back and did an oil change, as I said, and I looked in the oil filter. If you want to, you can also cut it open. Please do not do it with an angle grinder, because obviously there's oil and there are special oil filter opening tools. But I just poured some oil out on a towel, and you can see there are really a bunch of there is a bunch of metal in there, which is going to be normal. do not worry, because this is from the piston rings and from the cylinder wall. There is going to be some metal that is in there. That's completely fine. The only thing you don't want to see is longer strains of metal, or rather like bits that look copper, or bits that, yeah, look a bit weird. There will be some smaller flakes, that's just fine, but nothing, no huge chunks or anything that would be concerning. Just look at what my oil looks like. Yours should look something similar after that break-in period. After those 50 kilometers, I would suggest driving another 500 kilometers with normal oil. You can in that period already give it full throttle, etc., rev it out, and also give it boost. The engine is broken in mostly now, but I would still do another oil change after 500 kilometers just to be safe, and I would not in that period do any full throttle 100 to 200 kilometer per hour runs or any autobahn runs or whatever. Just like, don't stress the engine excessively, like no really long pulls, etc. Just short pulls, but boost and RPMs are fine. I also did a compression test here. The results you can see here.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So that's fun. I did a compression test, and I don't know what exactly is wrong, because I tested with the same compression tester before, where the engine had 12 bar, and the engine has definitely more power than before, so I don't really know what's up here. I'm going to go on a dyno and see if the engine makes the power it should be. If it doesn't, I may pull the head off again, because that seems a bit suspicious. Because also the difference between the 7-bar cylinder and the almost 10-bar cylinder, yeah, that's a lot of difference, and usually the cylinders should be all the same, or at least kind of, especially after a rebuild. For comparison, on my MX-5 I had 14-bar compression after a rebuild, and that's only 9.5 to 1 compression, and this engine is supposed to be like 11.1 or even more, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Could be the tester going bad, and could be something else, but yeah, does kind of seem a bit weird. But I just wanted to show you because I want to be honest in my videos, and also show if something goes wrong. Well, I guess we'll see on the dyno then if the car still makes power or not. If it doesn't, well, it's gonna be interesting. That's it for this video. As I said, see you in the next video when we do a cost breakdown. I wish you a nice day, and goodbye.